Good morning, Chris.
Morning. How's it going, Gary?
Going well, man. I wanted to get you on because, and I was just telling James a little earlier here, I've never gone to the spring meetings in all my years doing this, but I think next year I'm going to have to go because it's just become, too big of a media event. But you were there yesterday, and thankfully you provided us with a couple Nick Saban clips for our newscast last night. Just give me the feel for what it was like yesterday. And I think you've been down there before, but for someone like myself who hasn't covered one of these, I know that's there to divvy up money and take care of official business. But boy, it's kind of a media circus too, kind of a prelude to SEC Media Days, isn't it?
I've got one tip for you if you want to go in the future. Ask Chuck Dunlap, the SID, for credentials like 6 months in advance.
I've heard the story about last year.
Yeah, they're going to tell you they're full, but they're not. In fact, I was one of 2 video cameras there yesterday. The other one was somewhere in Florida, and they were there for McElwain and Saban, and that was it. But they were there for like 45 minutes. I was the only TV camera there. They only allow one person per media outlet. You cannot have 2. So when you say SEC Media Days, it's like an SEC Media Days like the private edition, the club edition. Like it's very restricted. I would say the media probably about 100 people there total, maybe 50. It's interesting because this week kind of really sets the tone for everything that the SEC wants to accomplish in the future. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the grad transfer rule. They are fully intent on amending that rule on Friday. The coaches are meeting today. The football coaches meet today, and they're going to make a decision on a handful of things come Friday.
Well, I'm for it myself. I think it needs to be amended. I think it needs to be universal for all conferences. And of course, Nick Saban yesterday, you covered him, and I read his entire transcript. And, man, he was on a little bit of a roll and talked for quite a while. What was some of your takeaways from – of course, he talked on the grad transfer. He talked on the early signing period. What were some of your takeaways from the Nick Saban period yesterday?
Well, when it comes to the grad transfers, in conference, he's staying the same. He does not want to allow any player within a conference to transfer within a conference because he says it leads to basically free agency for anybody who's not getting playing time, et cetera, stuff like that. When it comes to the grad transfer rule for other conferences and out-of-state schools, stuff like that, he's absolutely with everybody else on the boat of there's no reason why the SEC needs to handicap itself just because a player in the past had a poor academic performance, and now it penalizes you and it penalizes a future potential player who wants to come there. So he's on the same boat as everyone else there. On the early signing period, that was probably one of the most striking things to me because I think I talked to about 4 or 5 coaches: McElwain, Saban, Smart, Butch Jones. I don't know if I forget anybody. Bill Muschamp. They have no idea what's going to happen next year with this because it's completely changing their entire off-season preparation, off-season scheduling. They have to evaluate guys at a completely different period now during the football season. It sounds like they all feel kind of obligated to evaluate talent more than they would because those guys can be committing 2 weeks after the season is over. And so they all realize that they have to change their schedules up, and they have no idea what to expect, and they're all just kind of taking it as it is.
Chris, one thing about Saban, he rolls with the punches, and he was asked several times yesterday about some of these rule changes and if they are in regards to him, whether it's recruiting, and he even pointed out, that head coaches were taken off the road probably because he and Urban Meyer were 2 of the few head coaches that enjoyed going out and evaluating, and a lot of coaches didn't want to do it. And that's a fact. I remember when that happened.
Yeah, that's what he said.
But he never makes excuses. He kept saying, so basically, do you resent these changes? No, they are what they are. We adjust to the rules, and we take it on the way that it is. And I think that's one of his great attributes. He has many as a head coach, though, is maybe he doesn't like something. We've seen it with the RPOs and the spread offenses. He may not like something, Chris, but he adjusts to it. And that's why he stays on top, I think, because if you're stuck in the past, you're going to get left behind, and it just won't happen with Nick Saban.
Well, I also think that the fact that the signing date is late December also kind of appeases all those coaches because if that signing period was June, it would be a complete disaster, and every single person in college football would be in an uproar. because their big worry was guys who may have bad character, academic issues, and they have no idea how to address that in June of their junior year of high school. So the fact that it got moved back to December, I think, made the coaches a little bit easier, and they can work with that. Because if it would have been earlier in the year, they would have gone to town, and you could have bet this week they would be making serious changes to that.
Chris Breece, our guest on the Bud Light Hotline. He's the sports director at WIAT Channel 42 in Birmingham. He was at Sandestin yesterday for the SEC spring meetings. I want to ask you about how much chatter and gossip there was in regards to Auburn moving to the East. I mean, I still think obviously that's a long way from happening, but there seems to be a lot of momentum, not just from Auburn folks now. Did you pick up on any of that? I'm
glad you brought that up. There's a lot of momentum in the public, in the media. There is zero momentum inside the SEC conference. In fact, multiple coaches were asked about it. Greg Sankey got grilled on it for about 5 minutes, and people realized to stop asking him about it, because Sankey's direct quote, something like this, was, "You know what? I get that question all the time, but only when I'm in the media conferences. He can bet on two things. He's always going to get asked about divisional realignment, and he's always going to get asked about going to a 9-game conference schedule." So he kind of laughed it off. He said, "Auburn going to the East is not on the docket this year." I talked to Jay Jacobs, the AD at Auburn. He says, not on the docket this year. And then I asked him, well, what's the reality of just having a conversation about it? And that conversation could lead to, a 10-year conversation. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if that conversation was in the next couple of years, not just a few years. Now, does a few years mean 3, or does that mean 5, does it mean 8, 10? But as of right now, it looks like there's going to be zero talk about it. But, and they went back to that Texas A&M and Missouri thing a lot from 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. When they both came into the conference. They mentioned, Jay Jacobs mentioned how, conference realignment is becoming a thing every once in a while now. Well, every once in a while it's going to come up pretty soon here. So we'll see what happens. But as of right now, I don't think there's any thought about Auburn going to the East. And it's just a talker. I mean, it's just something that people like to talk about, because if you're an Alabama fan, I bet they're probably split right down the middle with Auburn fans of wanting to go East or not wanting to go East.
Chris, I was taken yesterday by the fact that, Nick Saban, he's still Nick Saban, he's still intense, but he is 65 years old. He'll be 66 before the next season is through. He's the elder statesman now of SEC coaches. And you look there yesterday, and in the East, there was Jim McElwain, Will Muschamp, and Kirby Smart, all Nick Saban proteges, all head coaches in the SEC East. And it just kind of struck me that, hey, not only is this guy the best coach in the Southeastern Conference and probably in college football, but now he's kind of he is kind of the Don of SEC coaches, and all of his proteges are trying to build their own programs. Did you take note of that at all, and did that strike you as interesting?
Well, no doubt he's the Bill Belichick of college football, and he's turning into that, because look at everywhere else throughout the country, even in the NFL. But yeah, interesting to me. I didn't really see those guys all interact very much. I'm sure they're around each other the rest of the week. I know they have golf matches set up or something like that, but. I saw all of them in the hallway. I noticed the one time I did notice Smart and McElwain didn't really, maybe they saw each other earlier, but I saw them in the same room crossing each other, and they didn't even make eye contact. That doesn't mean anything. But I'm sure they're around each other all week, but I didn't really see them mingling around too much with each other.
Well, I was going to ask you, and you've already said, you've kind of answered. I wonder, because I did see McElwain and Saban together on Paul Feinbaum's show. And boy, it was a mutual admiration society. I'm wondering though if there was any scuttlebutt. The perception is now that Nick Saban and Kirby Smart aren't as close. And granted, they're different programs, but that there was a little friction there based on Smart leaving for Georgia. Did you pick up on any of that?
No, I didn't. But I can tell you that Kirby Smart's turning into Nick Saban very quickly when it comes to the media. I mean, he's not mean to the media, or Saban's not mean either. But he's, sometimes he shows up like. The Gulf Regions Pro-Am the other week. Smart, was iffy about talking to the media. He was late to getting to the media thing yesterday. They had to change the schedules around. So to me, it seems like, the media is becoming an obligation for him, and it kind of, becoming a mini Nick Saban with stuff like that.
Well, it seems like anybody that coaches for Saban, they put the same policies in place. The one voice type thing. Most of the assistants aren't allowed to talk. Everything's based on the Nick Saban system. Of course, what I always say is that's good. Take some things, but you'd better find your own little niche too, because you can't out Nick Saban at Nick Saban stuff. You know what I mean, Chris?
Well, I'll tell you, Jim McElwain is a very intriguing example of that. He is the polar opposite. Now, he may have media things in place with his players in terms of who can talk and stuff like that, but
personality-wise, yeah.
Jim McElwain, personality-wise, I mean, watching him yesterday, he was so chummy. Like, even when he wasn't even at the podium, he was in the media room just chit-chatting away and joking with guys, and this is an hour after he was talking. You don't see anybody else do that.
You're right. You're right. He's a very likable guy and down to earth. What about the shark pick? I mean, to me, this is just such a joke that he actually even had to come out and deny that it was him. But was there still any chatter going on about Jim McElwain naked on the shark?
No, I didn't hear any comment from him about that. But, yeah, I thought it was funny how Florida thought the photo looked so much like him that they had to have a statement about, no, it's not Jim McElwain.
Finally, from the East, Chris, I mean, it seems to be wide open again. I know Florida's made it the last couple of years, and people, if you don't win the SEC championship game, seem to forget who that other team is. But McElwain's made it. I think Muschamp did a good job in his first year. Smart's there. The heat's on Butch Jones. So what do you think about it? I mean, clearly in the West, it starts with Alabama. Not that somebody else can't win it, but that's where it starts. In the East, just your early feelings on that division and who might come out of there.
Well, Tennessee seems like they're down. I think everyone can agree with that. Georgia won, 8-5 last year?
They did.
I think they can make a step up. I think, back to the perennial Margaret 10-win seasons, which seem like they happen every year. I think they could probably get to 10 this year. Florida, I mean, that Malik Zaire grad transfer thing, that, granted, he didn't win a job at Notre Dame. Deshaun Kaiser's probably pretty good, hence he went to the NFL. But I think if Malik Zaire can grad transfer to Florida, you look at who was on that Florida roster last year, I think he would at least be a minimal upgrade at the very least. And as you've seen with Alabama playing Florida in the SEC title game last year, quarterback play was a serious issue for Florida, and it always has been. I mean, look at their offense the last couple of years. So if they can get that quarterback from Notre Dame, you've got to think Florida's the favorite. Georgia's probably there. I think Tennessee's down. I don't see South Carolina competing yet. Maybe they can. And obviously, you got Kentucky and Vanderbilt at the bottom, and Missouri probably at the bottom as well. So I'd say Florida with probably Georgia at their heels. Yeah,
based on what you said earlier and also what I'm hearing and reading, it looks like that SEC is going to pave the way for Zaire to enroll at Florida. Isn't that your feeling?
Yeah, but I guess the problem is they're looking well, actually, no, because the amendment that they want to do now is it's a 3-year ban. So the rule is this. If you have a guy recently who did not academically qualify, who wanted to grad transfer, it's a 3-year ban for them. Now, they want to change that this week. Friday, they're probably going to vote on it. They want to change it to a 1-year ban. So for Florida, Zaire would qualify because that was 2 years ago that happened.
Okay.
So this is the third and final year of Florida not being able to take a grad transfer. So if they do pass that, he would be able to. And I guess from what I've read, Zaire is just waiting on Florida and Texas. He wants to go to Florida apparently, and if they change this rule on Friday, he's probably going to go. So we'll see.
I think it'll get changed. I think there's a lot of pressure on the SEC to get it changed.
Yeah, and Sankey talked for 30 minutes to the media last night, and he said absolutely nothing for 30 minutes. If you're a TV broadcaster, it's a nightmare because there's nothing good to play from him, and I can see why he's doing that. They haven't talked about the rules yet. They haven't made any rule changes, so when you get asked about it, he's not going to tip his hat or anything. So he made it seem like they are going to make that a 1-year grad transfer rule.
Yeah, and people just don't understand that aren't in broadcasting how frustrating that is when you're going through 30 minutes. Well, I still use the term tape. It's not tape anymore. But when you're going through 30 minutes of video trying to find a 20-second soundbite and you can't find one, it just drives you nuts.
Especially since broadcasting soundbites that you want in broadcasting is much different than print. That's what I found, too. I've been in the business for 10 years. Getting a broadcast soundbite is much different than what a beat writer is asking for.
Absolutely.
And so I feel 95% of the time, the soundbites that I use from a coach or a player are stuff that I like.
You're right. Yeah, because you know what you want.
Because it's just a different form of media, a different form of portraying your story. It's just different because we have 15 seconds, so you got to get it all concise, and that's the only time you have.
and these speed riders are asking specific questions based on a piece that they're doing, and they can go in depth. It's totally different. But good stuff, man. I appreciate you jumping on with us this morning, giving us an update on what it was like down there. You can follow Chris on Twitter, by the way. It's very simple, at Chris Breece, and catch him weeknights on